Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Genre Guy channel. This episode is going to be a freewheeling, spoiler-filled discussion of Godzilla King of Monsters. Now, Godzilla has a special place in my heart as a genre film fan. In fact, the Godzilla franchise actually changed the course of my life. As a young child growing up in Ohio back in several decades ago, I loved Godzilla movies coming on, Saturday mornings and stuff, because, every kid loved dinosaurs. And I was absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs. And a dinosaur that's so big that it can stomp buildings and breathe fire, I'm on board. But a curious thing happened as I was watching these Godzilla films. Not only did I love it for the monster action and the city stomping, but I realized that I remember specifically the scene in King Kong vs. Godzilla where King Kong and Godzilla stomp on, destroy Atami Castle in Nagoya, that this architecture is different, and the backgrounds, I look closely at the backgrounds because every so often you see the same film over and over. Those backgrounds, the signs are in a completely different language. There was katakana and hiragana and kanji, and obviously the people were Japanese, but I realized this is an entirely different culture with an entirely different look and feel to it. And I asked my mom, I said, where is this place? And she goes, that's Japan. Japan's an island. And I was blown away that an island, a country could be as big as an island. Because at that time, the biggest island I had ever seen was in the Meander Reservoir. It was a little tiny dirt mound that had one tree on it. So to me, that was an island. Of course, my limited experience, 3 or 4 years old and stuff. So I became really enamored with Japanese culture at that point. And nowadays, younger people, anime is their gateway drug into Japanese culture. Well, back then there was nothing. There was just Godzilla movies and maybe some Ultraman, and that was it. So that became my intro point to Japanese culture. Later on, I went to film school, and I became in love with Akira Kurosawa movies. I guess that was like a train that started with Godzilla and went to Kurosawa, and then I decided to minor in Japanese, and then I decided I took a job in Japan, and I lived in Japan for 4 years, very adventurous years. I had some great memories, some of the best years of my life in Japan. Wouldn't trade it for anything. So I would not have had those 4 great years and built up all these experiences without Godzilla movies. So Godzilla means a lot to me. And when I saw, especially at the end of Kong Skull Island, where I saw at the end end credit stinger, where they show the cave paintings and you see Ghidorah and Mothra and Rodan, and you see that they're getting ready to do a modern retelling of like Destroy All Monsters. That blew me away, that, oh my God, we're going to see this on the big screen, done right. Not like the Roland Emmerich fake Godzilla, the fake like pseudo Beast from 20,000 Fathoms kind of Godzilla. We're going to see the real Godzilla done on screen with the big effects and the big budget and everything. So, does it live up to my expectations from that point? Yes. To me, it does everything that I want. As a film, Godzilla King of Monsters is maybe not that great. Kind of average at best. Sub-average at best, actually. But to me, I know this film has not been doing well as far as like critically or in the box office. But what I believe is, if you love something, even if it's cheesy, if it's something like Godzilla or Ultraman or Kamen Rider or something, but if it speaks to you and there's certain things about that are true to that experience, if the big budget film respects those things and does those things for you, then I think that's successful. In that case, Godzilla King of Monsters is a complete 100% success for me, because the director, Michael Dougherty, who also actually shares a little bit of background as far as he's an Ohio native. In his case, I believe he's half Japanese. So in his case, seeing the Godzilla films in Ohio as a young boy, he was watching them because these are people that look like him. So he also developed this great love and affection for these films. As cheesy as they can be and as badly plotted as they can be, he saw like the beauty in these films. So I believe that he put a lot of that love into this film. And it shows whenever the creatures are on screen, whenever the kaiju are on screen, the film actually comes to life. And even though a lot of the action scenes are shot in bad weather effects at night, it's kind of dark. There's a lot of like debris in the way, but the things that he gets right, I believe, specifically, the number one thing is that every one of the kaiju, Godzilla, Ghidorah, Mothra, Rodan, all the main ones, every time they're on screen, they always feel like actual living creatures that have a thought process. In fact, a lot's been made of Gamera's. I'm sorry, Gamera's not in this film, but that'd be nice. Put him in there. Ghidorah has 3 heads. Each head has a specific personality. So the middle head is like the alpha male head. He's serious. He's no bullshit. He's just gonna go right after the target. And the right head is more of like the lieutenant. He wants to please the middle head, and then the left head hysterically is like dumb as crap. I mean, he's like the special needs head. And in fact, there's one little bit where he actually the left head, the middle and right head are looking at their target. I think it's the Osprey when it first comes out of the ice prison in Antarctica. They're going after the human characters in their ship, and the left head kind of gets distracted and looks off screen, and the middle head actually grabs him by the horn and pulls him over to look at what he wants him to look at. Those little details are phenomenal. The Big G himself, even though I think his design, which was established in the 2014 film, I'm not a big fan of, actually. It's very crocodilian, but his eyes are extremely small, and I know that they did that because if he had big eyes, it would look very goofy and stuff with the size of his creature. But it's kind of hard to see his expression sometimes because he's so monochromatic. He's kind of gray and brown, and it's kind of hard to see his facial features sometimes, especially when there's a lot of rain going down. But his movements and everything, he's especially when he rears up and he goes to breathe out his atomic breath. I mean, there's this look, which I think they did excellently well in the 2014 film, where he has this look of like pure hatred, that's what's actually gushing out of him, is not just atomic breath, but it's his hatred for his enemies, or his fury and his rage at whatever's going on ecologically with the planet or something. So whenever he does that, whenever he rears up and pulls his chest out, I think that's done really well. Also, Rodan, I noticed, as I've seen the film a few times now, what I love is that Rodan comes off as kind of like the schoolyard bully who's got what do they call it, like fat muscles or something. He's not he kind of thinks he's much tougher than he is. He picks a fight with Ghidorah and gets his ass kicked. And as soon as he gets his ass, at first when he first gets into the fight, he's like, oh, I'm going to rule this fight. And he comes in with a lot of bravado and everything. And then after he gets his ass kicked, he completely just supplicates himself in front of Ghidorah on the banks of this volcano in Mexico. And what's great is at the very, very end, again, these are all spoilers, so at the very end when Godzilla has claimed his throne as king of the monsters, there's a little moment where when all the creatures are surrounding Godzilla to basically bend the knee in Game of Thrones parlance. Rodan does this little thing where he acts like he's going to act up, like, I'm going to challenge you one more time. And then Godzilla just gives him the snort, and then he just goes back and cowers back down and folds his wings up over his head. And that kind of stuff, those little details, even when Mothra fights Rodan, and they fight on top of the skyscraper, and Mothra gets pretty critically injured, and she after she rams Rodan through the shoulder with her stinger, and he falls away. She's left on top of the skyscraper by herself, and she does this little thing where she's trying to steady herself, and her one claw is she's trying to balance herself, and it kind of like slides and slips, and it was just great animation. There was like a lot of little touches like that. There's tons of Easter eggs popped in there and stuff. Tons of references to the original films. There's little things like when the people are news footage of the protests. There's a sign that says "Destroy all monsters," which is of course one of the original titles of one of the Godzilla films. The fact that Godzilla kind of goes nuclear at the end, the burning Godzilla that they're calling it, which is a direct reference to Godzilla vs. Destroyer. The fact, which I did not catch completely the first time, but the Dr. Chen, I believe, who's played by Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon's Zhang Ziyi, she is the twin. There's a twin who's at the Mothra cocoon site. And I see now that they're actually the two separate girls, because the one girl has short hair and the other girl has long hair. But of course they show, I think her name is Dr. Chen. So they show that she has a lineage where all the women in the family are twins. And it's obviously a reference to the Shobijin or the Cosmos, the twin girls from the Mothra series. Every time Mothra's shown up, there's been a set of twins. And although some of the Japanese films cheated, they did not have actual twins in the, I think, the Showa era Godzilla films. They were just girls that looked alike. But that was phenomenal. That little, those are the kinds of things that make me love the film. Now, as a film, quote unquote, total from beginning to end, if I were looking at it objectively as a non-Godzilla fan, just maybe a fan of genre movies, I would put it kind of like, I'd put it above Pacific Rim number 2, because Pacific Rim number 2 was pretty bad. But I'd put it maybe a little bit below the original Pacific Rim, if that were the case. Because, again, as in every Godzilla movie, I don't think there's ever been a Godzilla movie, quote unquote, that actually had a good human story. If you look at my library here, this entire row is my Godzilla stuff, my kaiju stuff. And I've, of course, seen everything in this row and everything up here. And I have to tell you, I can't remember one of them that had a really good actual human story that involved me. And this is no different. The tacked on, by now it's like, I guess it's some kind of obligation from the Writers Guild of America that if you have some kind of natural disaster movie or giant monster attack or alien invasion, you are obliged to put in a subplot of a broken family that's been through a divorce or a child that has died. In this case, we have both melded together, and the audience is supposed to care about this stuff. Well, they don't, and nobody cares about any of the human characters except for, with the exception of Dr. Serizawa, which of course is a reference to the original Dr. Serizawa, and also again back to the references to the originals. I warned you this would be a freewheeling discussion. There's also a reference to the original Oxygen Destroyer, which is what killed Godzilla in the original 54 movie. Excellent stuff. Even had the actual graphic of the Oxygen Destroyer inside the missile. But anyway, Dr. Serizawa, portrayed by Ken Watanabe. Now, he is an interesting character just because he has this gravitas, and he has something going on. He's consistent throughout all the films where he obviously is the kind of guy who loves these creatures in a certain way and has this kind of affection for them. Of course, that would be very terribly irresponsible if he was a real human being, because you would think these creatures are just, even Godzilla, if he's benevolent, they're just, even by accident, they're just killing thousands and thousands of people. So if it was the real world, you'd be hell-bent on destroying these monsters at any cost. Well, of course, we know as the audience what he knows, which is that some of these creatures are necessary to fend off even worse creatures, as in Ghidorah and stuff. So we're on his side for that. But he's really well portrayed. His character's consistent throughout, and he brings this just total gravitas to that performance. And I have to say that the performances were good. Millie Bobby Brown really brings it. In Stranger Things, she was just kind of like a cipher, you know. She doesn't get to do too much until later on in the second season because, you know, she is by nature a person who has been kind of like confined and stuff and has been forced to repress her emotions. So in this case, I think she's been able to show that she can cry on cue and stuff like that. But she's really bringing it. I think everyone's really bringing it. I felt like the performances were wasted on a really bad script. And the script is, it kind of makes sense. There's a MacGuffin, this thing called the Orca, this device that kind of welds the human story into this. One thing I will say they did right is that because of this MacGuffin, this thing called the Orca, which can kind of control the monsters to some extent, or at least guide them or manipulate them. Because of this device, and because the human beings have this thing, and it kind of changes hands a couple times, because of that, the human beings are actually able to influence the monster action. Of course, that's what we're here for. We're here for the monster action, but the human beings are actually able to actually either bring about a fight or change the course of a fight just because of the use of this device. So that is a very positive point. To be honest, with a lot of the original Japanese, especially the Heisei era Godzilla films, literally if you had taken the human plot out completely and just cut together just the monster parts, the plot would not have changed. The human beings have absolutely no bearing on the kaiju action at all. And so then you're like, why are we even watching these people? Just to pad out the time, right? I know, special effects are expensive, but if that's the case, just have just the movie with just the creatures, which I think would be the movie to watch, because the creatures are so expressive, and like I said, you can always tell what they're thinking. There's a great point where in the final battle in Boston, where Ghidorah, Mothra actually swoops by and plasters Ghidorah's heads to the skyscraper with her webbing, and the one head kind of starts to pull the webbing off the other heads to free it, and then he sees something. It's actually Godzilla's reflection in the skyscraper. Godzilla's coming towards him, barreling towards him, and then it looks back and has this look of kind of like hatred and fear at the same time. So many of those little touches, I was like, you could do a whole movie with just the monsters. You don't need the people. Maybe one scene of them opening up a crypt or something like that. That's all you need. Of course, Serizawa's gone, and he sacrifices himself in this film, but he's the one character that I think that audiences were on board with. Maybe Millie Bobby Brown to an extent. Although, there's a disturbing thing in this film which happens, which not only is disturbing in its implications for some of the characters, but it completely undermines whatever theme there is to the film. So the bad guys, led by Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister of Game of Thrones fame, he's got this great kind of presence to him. He doesn't really have to act; he just has to show up, and he's just great. So he's an eco-terrorist, and Vera Farmiga ends up kind of joining his cause, or as we find out later, she actually recruited him to her cause, which of course means that if you've seen the film a couple times, you start to pick up on cues that Millie Bobby Brown, as her daughter, is not just an innocent bystander who's been swept up in this thing. She's actually in, at least on part of the plot. There's a scene later on where Charles Dance says, "Oh, did you tell her daughter this was going to be easy? We were going to release the monsters one at a time and everyone would live happily ever after. The human and monster would coexist." Well, that means that, at least to some extent, she at least knew her mother was going to release these monsters. Some of them are very close to civilized areas, and people were going to necessarily die as part of collateral damage. So, that's a very disturbing. Now, granted, she's a young child. She's maybe 13, I think, in the film or something. But, so, yeah, she would be idealistic, easily brainwashed. It's her mom and stuff like that. But, and she's out in the middle of the jungle, out in the middle of nowhere. So she has no other influence, homeschool and stuff. But still, it's very disturbing that the main characters would be this kind of off base and this cavalier with the use of human life. I know that in Godzilla 2000, the main character, he's kind of given a lot of crap because he wants to just study Godzilla instead of killing him. Well, this is way beyond this. This is like purposefully releasing giant creatures that are going to knowingly destroy major cities just because you think it's going to be good for the environment in the end. And I am, believe it or not, I am like, besides my love of genre films, my next biggest passion is actually the environment. I do a ton of stuff for Sierra Club and everything. I drive an electric vehicle. I do everything like that. So I'm on board with the ecological message 100%. I am the preaching to the choir, and it's a big turnoff. And it's really bad because it makes everything that the film is supposedly trying to do as a theme, which these creatures are supposed to represent the Earth's natural defenses against human pollution and interference. It just completely cheapens and destroys that entire topic or theme. So they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to have an ecological theme, which is a bedrock of Godzilla films, and at the same time, they're trying to turn the people who are doing that very thing into the villains of the film. So it's very scatological. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't fit, and it totally destroys everything that the filmmakers are trying to do. It's obvious when it came to this human plot part, they were just trying to, I guess, fit in a lot of stuff that they had seen in other Godzilla films without really thinking about how they fit together or why they should fit together. And also, they're doing this thing where they're trying to set up certain things for the future MonsterVerse. As we know, like a lot of studios, ever since Marvel was successful with the Marvel Universe, everyone's been trying to replicate that. Universal had the Dark Universe, which lasted over one movie, Tom Cruise's Mummy, and now Legendary's been doing this with the MonsterVerse, which I think has been a little bit more successful. But what I hope they would learn is that you can't spend half the movie setting up the other movies. Batman v Superman was the absolute worst offender of this. There's whole scenes where they just leave the action just to go out and show Wonder Woman finding a file that sets up other characters in the new movies and stuff. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I think really pulls the movie back. The human action, if you were just to cut out the monster scenes and just watch the human action, it's better than the Transformers films. I mean, it's a coherent A to B kind of plot, but it's not well done. I mean, like I said, it's unfortunate because the casting is good, and the actors are actually. I didn't see anybody really phoning it in. Everybody is really, maybe Michael Strahan with his Colonel character is kind of like looks tired, but he looked like that in the last film. So everyone's, if they had been served by a better script, I think this could have been one of the greatest kind of like giant monster and rampage films ever. The best film, I believe, of this genre of giant monsters on the rampage is Jurassic Park, because you've got, it captures the majesty of the creatures, the terror of the creatures, the special effects are wonderful, the action is well staged and easy to follow, and you're on board with the characters, at least to an extent, and it's consistent in the themes that it brings up. There's the great boardroom scene where they talk about the ethics of bringing these creatures back, which is the whole underpinning of the entire film, and they stick with that. Even to the end when the T-Rex actually inadvertently saves the people from the Velociraptors, that's, I think, also something that echoes the entire theme of the film, which is that, nature knows better than we do. So the themes in this film are kind of like, it's a shotgun approach to themes. It's just like load up all the themes you can think of from a Godzilla film. Oh, we have an ecological message, and we have a broken family drama, and we have a rebirth kind of motif and stuff, and we have a redemption arc. Let's just put them all in a shotgun of themes and just blast them at the camera. Well, you've got to pick one and kind of stick with it all the way through. You can have maybe one main theme and maybe one sub-theme. If you do more than that, it becomes a muddled mess, and that's unfortunately what they did with this. There's so much that I could say because I'm just such a fan of the genre, and I'm, on one hand, the monster action is everything I would hope for, and on the other hand, it's brought down by not just the human drama, which has always been bad in the Godzilla films. It's brought down by an unfortunate lack of focus, which if they had, I think this could have been like a really A+ movie. As it is, maybe a C+ as far as a solid C as far as a movie goes. Like if I was not a Godzilla fan, of course I have to kind of recuse myself because I cannot look at this objectively. I have to, whenever I see the creatures on film, on screen, when I hear their cries and their roars portrayed correctly with the greatest sound editing that Hollywood can muster, I just get chills up my arms. And special shout out to the music. The music echoed. It has. They did not shy away from the original music. In fact, they completely welded the original music into it. The original iconic Akira Ifukube's iconic scores are played throughout. There's the Mothra score. There's the original Godzilla score. There's even that cover of Blue Oyster Cult, which of course has nothing to do with the original films, but that the music is just sent me over the edge. I just absolutely love that. The original callbacks and the very last shot when Godzilla is standing on the mound and the other kaiju are around him in a circle and he roars and declares himself King of the Monsters. Then it just smash cuts to the title, Godzilla King of Monsters. And then you hear the dun 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 dun. That was just phenomenal. And then hearing the original when Mothra actually erupts from her cocoon, hearing the original Mothra theme done correctly and stuff. Those kind of things were just wonderful. They even melded. I saw themes, musical themes from the 2014 film at appropriate moments. So they've been building layer by layer musically onto this. The music was just absolutely phenomenal. Get the soundtrack and stuff. So I could go on forever. Like I said, this is going to be a rambler. Forgive me. Other episodes are going to be much more focused and stuff. But I just want to get this kind of series kicked off. And I hope you guys enjoyed the film. I absolutely loved it. I know it's not doing that great, but go out and see it. I've seen it 3 times already, but see it on the biggest screen possible before it leaves theaters and gets buried by the crappy X-Men movie and stuff. So those are my thoughts, and welcome to the channel. And I hope that we get to see many, many more excellent genre films in the future.